Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth.
Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the
All
world.
around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found for salvation. I sit and listen to your story for the truth.
Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans
You're telling
and
me,
citizens of the
please
world.
don't worry. I see frustration. It's a lot in this world you should know till I found for. And love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And hello, loving life family. First off, some admin. Thank you so much, Michelle Mullard, for establishing and looking after our new Instagram account. The easiest way to find it is in the header image of lovinglifetv.com. See just below me here, the link. And clicking on the icon nearest to the LL logo, located on the right-hand side of the header. Thanks also to Wolfie, who established and manages our new Twitter account, also located in the same place as Instagram. You will also find icon links to the LL Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages in the bottom right of the header of this YouTube channel. Please join both Twitter and Instagram, as we will be using these as marketing tools going forward. Now, Michelle Mullard has also agreed to be our investigative reporter in Cape Town, and this weekend I'm compiling a letter of appointment in that role so that she can get a press pass for representing lovinglifetv.com at local events. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer reporter in your geographic region, please email me. Thanks also to Rudy, who is building our new exciting platform at lovinglifetv.com, or LLTV as I call it. Today he came up with an amazing solution to reducing video sizes to about 20% of the original size without losing any quality whatsoever. An excellent tool we will be using on LLTV. Right, tonight I'm talking to Jack Miller from the Cape Party. Jack has jumped at the opportunity to have the Cape Party channel participating on LLTV through the contributing channels. Linked at the top of our new platform. The channel will appear soon on LLTV. The Cape Party is at the sharp end of politics in the Western Cape, and politically leading the way for secession. The link to their YouTube channel is in the description below this video. I'll get Jack on now, but please remember to subscribe to Loving Life to be kept informed, and also if you have questions you'd like to ask Jack, please just put them in the side chat and I'll put those to Jack later in the live stream. Okay, let's get Jack on. Hi, Jack.
How's it, Scott?
Good. Yourself, buddy?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I want to tell you a little story, Jack, and then we'll get into the questions about Cape Party. And yesterday, while on a bus going home, I was listening to the UN YouTube channel. Bangladesh and Brazil spokesmen were speaking live in the UN chamber on YouTube. They were expressing their allegiance to the United Nations and thanking the President for the great work that he is doing. In my view, the representation of nations in the United Nations are doing the bidding of the New World Order and the Great Reset with no regard to the freedoms of their own populations. They live in a different world and they are traitors to their own people. This brings me to a very relevant question. How much time do we have left to secede from the Western Cape in South Africa before the anticipated global government of nations is brought upon us? Over to you.
Wow, Scott, that is quite an opening, quite a profound opening.
It's very real.
It is frighteningly real. Yeah, to answer that question, I mean, that is a really profound question, and I don't know if I can do it justice. Let me put it like this. When we formed the Cape Party in 2007, we thought we had about 5 years to achieve Cape independence. We thought with the ANC's policy of destroying the Cape from the inside, we literally had about 5 years to pull it off. And what's been fascinating doing this for the last 14 years now is that, first of all, Cape independence wasn't very popular when we started in 2007. In fact, I've had many furious debates with friends back then who thought we were crazy. And now those same friends are very much in favor of it. So the climate has changed. People are ready for it now. So that's the first good sign. The other good sign is that the ANC and all the other African nationalist agenda parties combined have never managed to get above around about 35% here in the Western Cape. They get absolutely slaughtered every single election. So even after we thought in 2007 we would see an increase in support for the ANC and parties like the Pan-African Congress and AZAPO and the EFF then arrived. So, but we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that at all. And in fact, in the last elections, 2019, the ANC and the EFF combined couldn't get above, I think it was around 35%. So the anti-African nationalist ideology here in the Western Cape is sitting at around about 65%. So I think we've got time. I really do. I really do think we have got time. Does it mean that it's going to be an easy pathway? I don't think so. Certainly not. But it's a necessary pathway, and in fact, we believe it's an inevitable pathway. We formed the Cape Party because we believe in democracy. We believe in peace. We believe in rule of law. We believe in a strong economy. We believe in equality before the law, regardless of your skin color. And we believe that we can have a rainbow nation right here in an independent Western Cape. And that vision has been slaughtered by the ANC and the EFF. And I think the vast majority, in fact, we know the vast majority of people here in the Western Cape, black, white, colored, Indian, Asian, are opposed to these types of policies, which is why we see a 65% of the population voting for, let's call it, anti-African nationalists, but also people who believe in democracy, people who believe in rule of law. So we'll get into the dynamics of the different political parties out there. It's a very interesting conversation, but you take the DA, the Cape Party, the ACDP, Freedom Front, etc., parties like that, ZACP, etc. Parties like this who have a fundamentally different ideology to parties like the ANC and EFF and PAC. We are a 2/3 majority here, and we simply need to decide that we've had enough. It's honestly that simple. It's about spreading the word. You know, go knock on your neighbor's door and tell them, guys, have you heard about the K Party? They're going to be contesting in a few months' time in the elections, and literally putting an X on a piece of paper in the privacy of a private ballot booth will guarantee you a referendum on breaking away from this sinking ship. It's that simple. No bullets fired, no nasty words, no fights, a legal political process. And this is what we want to offer people through the democratic systems, which in fact are quite good in this country. Again, we can talk about that later. We can get this independent country. And Scott, how long is it going to take? It's going to take as long as it takes for people to wake up. And I'm feeling very positive after last year. As bad as this lockdown has been, it's been good in the sense that it's gotten people to wake up. This is insanity. The ANC is destroying the economy. This is deliberate, and we here in the Cape deserve better than this, and we can have better than this. And frankly, we could literally pull it off in the next 8 months if people vote Cape Party in the upcoming elections.
Okay, now that there are a couple of key questions I've got related to that. And the first one is related to voting for the Cape Party. If the DA were to drop down below, let's say, that magical 50% support in the Western Cape, and the Cape Party picked up, let's say, 10%, and with that 10%, you could get the DA into power, if I can use that word. Obviously, one of your conditions would be a referendum on independence, wouldn't it?
100% correct. And there's a really big fallacy, a lie, an outright lie that the DA has been pushing for decades now. They intentionally trick the voters. You know, as much as I can criticize a lot about the South African government and the state of affairs here, one thing I've really got to tip my hat to is the political system that we have here. Let me rather phrase the electoral system. We have a very good electoral system. We don't have a first past the post system like they have in America. And because America's in the news all the time, people think, oh, basically the party with the most votes wins. That is not true. And I need to repeat this. The party with the most votes does not win. So let me paint this out quite clearly. We have a proportional representation system. It's similar to the German political system. You can have the ANC, it's not going to happen, but let's play this game. Let's assume that the ANC, well, let's give them probably a realistic number. They get around about 30%. Let's say the DA gets 25%, and the Cape Party gets 10%, and the Freedom Front gets 10%, and the ACDP gets 10%. The DA, the Cape Party, the Freedom Front, the ACDP collectively would make 55%. So even though the ANC is the largest political party with 30%, and all other votes go to these other organizations who the presumption would be that the ACDP and Freedom Front and DA and would join us in our belief that we should have a referendum on Cape independence. I think it's more likely we'll get them to support our view than obviously EFF or ANC. So that coalition would be the majority. So the ANC could be the biggest party at 30%, and the DA could have 25%. And with all of us together, we would still be far superior than the ANC. So people don't understand that. They can be completely safe in voting for the Cape Party in these upcoming elections because they can know that a vote for the Cape Party is not a vote that would result in the ANC getting in. Quite the contrary. We're here to put pressure on the DA to be a better political party. They've lost their way. I mean, I used to be a DA supporter many years back until the point that it just got so outrageously obvious that they were trying to be an ANC light. They were using us here in the Western Cape to try and expand their ambitions in the rest of the country, and adopted ANC policies and completely took the people of the Western Cape for granted. And it's inexcusable. And I mean, yeah, the things that the DA have done, it's about time the voters hold them to account. And a good way that they can do that is to drive the DA underneath 50%. This is the key. The ANC is not the threat here. The EFF is not a threat here. They're only going to get around 35%, as they've done for the last 27 years. And let me just point out, the only time that the ANC got in was when they put in that law for crossing the floor, and then they bribed like 20% of the parliamentarians to join them. So the ANC's never won a fair election. It was only the floor crossing that got them in here. So that point needs to be pointed out. People are going to say, no, you're wrong. The ANC's won here. They have never won here fair and square. They've never won an election here on raw votes. The only time they've ever gotten in was when they crooked the system and bought politicians in the DA and Nats to join the ANC to completely circumvent the will of the voters here in the Western Cape. So the ANC and EFF are only going to get around 35% in these upcoming elections this year, as they've done for the last 3 decades. So if we want real change, our opposition, our stumbling block is not the ANC or the EFF, it's the DA. The DA is preventing us from getting this referendum. And the only way we can get this referendum is if we force them to say, listen, if they get 50.1%, they are going to sit back on their laurels and do what they've done for the last decade and a half, and that is governed by dictatorial decree. The DA is the same here in the Western Cape as the ANC is on the national level. They're unaccountable, and we need to make them accountable. And the way we make them accountable is we drive them under 50%. So if we can get the DA to 49% or 45%, the Cape Party is 5 or 10%, the Freedom Front is 5 or 10%, the ACDP is 5 or 10%, and other organizations, ZACP, etc., good parties out there, or rather parties that are more ideologically leaning, with a little bit more common sense. You know, we obviously have disagreements with a number of these parties. We view things in a different way, but we're more likely to negotiate with those parties than we are, or rather reach agreement. Reach agreements on more issues with those parties than we would with the EFF and ANC. And I also want to say that we're here to negotiate. We're not a party that is arrogant in. We understand that we're always going to have neighbors. The Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, Free State, etc. We're always going to be neighbors, and we want to have good, friendly business relationships with these other entities. And so when we get our majority, when we get our 50% plus one, and frankly, I think we're going to get much more than that. When we have that referendum, I think the number is going to be a big number. But all we need is 50% plus one. So when we get that mandate in that referendum, we then have the document legally, the South African Constitution, United Nations Constitution, African Union Constitution, all of which South Africa is a signatory to. We then sit down at the negotiation table with the ANC and EFF and all the various other parties there, and we say, look, the people of the Western Cape have spoken. There is a constitutional obligation to recognize us both nationally as well as internationally, and we now need to determine what terms and conditions we're going to engage in this form of self-determination. So where exactly will the borders be of the national debt? How much of that debt is the Western Cape going to take? How much of that debt is the rest of South Africa? Or, I mean, they've been wanting to call it the country Azania for a very long time. So they would probably change the name to Azania. And we'll negotiate these various terms and conditions. And that's going to be the exciting part. And I've got good relationships with certain people in the ANC. I've had meaningful discussions, you know,
right.
common sense discussions. So I look forward to that day, and I think in spite of what the media likes to create hysteria about this, I think it's going to be a far more common sense approach and logical approach to finding the best possible solution for all parties involved.
Right. Now, I've got to say, I was delighted to see in the Independence March a short while ago, the Freedom Front attending and being part of that, because that sent a very strong message. On the other hand, you had the new UIM under Neil de Beer, who said there's no way in any time that they would support secession in the Western Cape. So you've got basically another competing body. And just for the record, Jack, I've got to tell you that the Loving Life channel totally endorses the idea of secession in the Western Cape. I see that as a very, very important option for, the minorities. Now, you raised the point about alerting people to the Cape Party. And I want to tell you a little story. Before getting on the bus yesterday, I had been chastised in a shop by a fellow citizen for standing too close to him while waiting to buy something. When I told him that there was no current cases of COVID-19 in Queensland, Australia, he clearly did not make the connection. So much of the population are indoctrinated. How do we wake the great unwashed out of their slumbers? I think that is your biggest hurdle.
I prepped some numbers for tonight. Anyone with grade 1 maths who is open-minded and is not simply going to parrot the line that the media pushes at us. And what I don't understand is how the same people who are cynical about Cyril Ramaphosa. Okay, so you rewind 12 months, and the majority of people in the Western Cape are thinking, who is this Ramaphosa to essentially say he is going to change the South African Constitution to impose expropriation without compensation. An ANC that has not only been completely silent, but subliminally endorsed these EFF policies, essentially, singing "Kill the Boer," the most inflammatory things you can imagine. This person, who the Western Cape, completely saw him for what he was, spoke about what did he talk about? He spoke about it wasn't the Great Reset, but it was about starting from an equal playing field and things like that. Expropriation without compensations. Now, this person has discussed essentially stealing everything that's not nailed down, and these same people cannot connect the dots and think that these lockdown policies are here for our best interest, when this same person 12 months prior was telling a large part of the South African population, just based on their skin color and ethnic group and cultural belief, that he was going to steal their property, steal their land, and change the constitution to do it. And now all of a sudden, this virus appears, and it's quite convenient to impose the most draconian policies that are frankly hell-bent on absolutely breaking the South African economy and crippling many of these people whose property he intends to steal. So I see a clear correlation between these things. And many people do, to be fair. Many people do. I'm surprised that it's not more people. I think it's the majority, but the fact that you'd even have 10 or 20 or 30% of people, referring to Cyril Ramaphosa as like the father of the nation and the father of them, it's an incredibly draconian way of viewing government's role. People have forgotten what the role of a government is. They're not our parents. They're
Yeah.
our employees. People forget we decide once every 5 years on who we want to fulfill the administrative tasks that we who run businesses and are working don't have time to do. We don't have time to go fill potholes. We don't have time to collect rubbish. We don't have time to run around and shoot criminals. So we pay
Well,
our
apparently most
taxes.
councils don't have time to do that either in South Africa. Or the money.
Well,
Sorry.
absolutely right. Absolutely, 100%
Back to
right.
you.
I'm just going back to basic.
Back to you.
Sorry, I'm just going back to basic principles, which people seem to have forgotten. They think that a government is their overlord and their parent, and they love this. Governments love this language of like fatherly figures, and you're our children, and this is, if you're obedient, if you just lock down for 3 weeks, then we're going to lift these draconian limitations on you. Oh, sorry, no, not enough masks worn, not enough social distancing, not enough this or that. We're going to slap you with another 2 weeks.
And then you have Ramaphosa's condescending addresses where he lectures you on what you should be doing.
Exactly. I mean, look, most people see it for what it is.
Yeah.
So a government is, we choose who we want to handle the administrative tasks of running a country, and it's really it's basic stuff. Cleaning streets, paying police officers, paying teachers. These are the things that we expect a government to do. And if they don't do a good enough job, we need to kick them out and put in new people that will simply carry out the administrative tasks that we've employed them to do. So these are our employees, and yet they're sitting there telling us that we can't go to work, we can't have love and joy in our lives, we cannot socialize. I mean, it's a little bit crazy. But as I said, I think the majority of people see this, but it doesn't stop the fact that we're in the situation that we are in. Governments have tremendous power, and we've allowed them to have this power. And this is why the Cape Party doesn't just stand for Cape independence. We stand for a new political system. The day and age has come to let go of these old archaic systems, which essentially place you, the voter, the taxpayer, the citizen, as a slave in society. And we don't just want an independent Cape. It's a waste of time just getting an independent Cape. We have a far bigger vision than this. An independent Cape is a result of a failed political system that began in 1910 and was forced on us by the British Empire. Whether you're white, black, colored, Indian, Asian, Afrikaans, Xhosa, Zulu, Tswana, Venda, whatever you might be, this system has failed you throughout South Africa's history. South Africa is not even the name of a country. It's a geographical location. The British came up with it. Union of South Africa, location on continent. And so whether it was the British Empire from 1910 to 1948, or the apartheid government from 1948 to 94, or the ANC regime from 94 to now, this centralized political system has oppressed all of us. We should all put our arms together, black, white, colored, Indian, Asian, different cultures, and say, guys, it's not working. It hasn't worked for over 100 years, and we need to devolve power down to the people, down to local communities. So we don't just want an independent Cape. We believe in a system of direct democracy. Right. And this is a system that is used in Switzerland to great effect. This is a country that survived 2 world wars with a mixture of Germans, French, Italians, and Romansk living in different cantons in Switzerland. When just outside the borders of Switzerland, you had genocide taking place between Germans and French and Italians. Right. Not a single bullet was fired in Switzerland. Why? Because they respect their neighbors, and good fences make good neighbors, and charity starts at home. So these are principles which make for a good country. And so in an independent Cape, we would want to see this Cape essentially represent the different. We're a very diverse place. The Cape is an incredibly diverse.
Sure.
We've got Muslims, Christians, Hindu, white, colored, Indian, black, Asian, Afrikaans, English, etc., etc. And we need to have a system that respects everyone. And the Swiss system is the best way of respecting everyone. So you can have cantons which are majority Muslim, you can have cantons which are majority Christian, you can have cantons that believe in communist policies, you can have cantons that believe in free market policies. It's live and let live. Now, and this is a way that we can literally live peacefully together and really build a fantastic country.
Yeah. Now, Jack, I just want to get back to the original question, but just addressing, we got well over 300 people watching at the moment, and I just encourage them to subscribe to Loving Life YouTube channel to be kept informed. We have nightly live streams at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time on a whole range of subjects. Last night we had a fellow on who was stuck in Frankfurt for 4 days because of COVID-19. And he was stuck in this airport and he felt like an outcast. It's quite an extraordinary story. Okay, I just want to get back to this question. Now, someone in the side chat made a very interesting statement. I think this is the biggest issue facing the Cape Party. And after we cover this question, I'm going to go through, specifically what is the Cape Party, but I just wanted to cover this ground first. And this guy said the majority of the minority know about and want independence in the Cape. The problem is the minority of the majority know about the same issue. So the problem is educating and getting to that majority that don't even know what Cape Party represent. And we're talking about, for example, Khayelitsha, places like that, where you've got hundreds of thousands of voters who don't have a clue about secession. I think that's the problem. How are you going to get to those people?
There's two answers to that question. The first answer is very hopeful in that we don't need to get to the majority, and I'll explain how the Cape Party pathway doesn't need that. But the second, and it is a very important issue, and it affects the Cape Party deeply. We aren't a corporate political entity like the DA or ANC. Let me put this into perspective. My friends of mine who are in the DA, I spoke to them. It was the 2019 elections. Either way, I asked them, what was your guys' budget? And they said they had a budget of 1.2 billion rand. 1.2 billion rand. The ANC, that same election, had a budget of 2 billion rand. Wow. In that same election, we at the Cape Party, we had a budget of about 250,000 rand. So you put that in perspective, and we survive on donations from supporters. So, the fact that we're growing the way that we're growing and we have the support base that we have is literally entirely word of mouth and grassroots. So I would encourage at this point anyone who wants to see Cape independence become a reality. It doesn't cost much. If we can just get a few thousand people to donate 50 rand a month, it's nothing. It's a 6-pack of beer. It's it's a thing of boerewors. Like if we can just get people to donate just 50 rand a month, 100 rand a month, if you can donate more, that would be fantastic. It helps us put ads out on social media. It helps us put posters on polls. It helps us buy airtime on radio and TV, etc. So all of these things really help. So we're a grassroots movement. We would encourage people who believe in this vision to speak to their friends and family and neighbors and anyone who supports this idea. Go to the Cape Party website, go to the support us section, and please, if you can just, 50 rand a month really goes a long way. And with that, we'll be well equipped for these upcoming elections, and we'll get the message out there. We're here to. The answer's in the name. The Cape Party is we're Cape people that are fighting for the Cape's best interests, unlike the DA, unlike the Freedom Front, unlike the ACDP, who, even though we support on a certain level, they have a mandate from voters which are predominantly outside of the Western Cape. The DA gets approximately 70% of its voters coming from outside of the Western Cape. The Freedom Front is approximately 93% of its voters outside of the Western Cape. So these organizations, and you can't blame them. They've got a financial and political interest in looking after the majority of their voter base, and the majority of their voter base is not in the Western Cape. We at the Cape Party are exclusively in the Western Cape, and potentially also the broader Cape region. But we're here for the Cape, we're from the Cape, and we're going to fight for the Cape's best interests. So, yeah, we're going to do everything we can do to get in, and we don't need, just to answer the question, we don't need a majority to win this referendum. As we mentioned earlier, if we could simply get the DA to, let's say, 46%, and the Cape Party has 5%, with 5%, we will have the leverage to put the fire to the feet of the DA and say, listen, if you want your majority, you're going to have to give the people of the Western Cape a referendum on these issues, on decentralization, and essentially a referendum on self-determination. So to answer the person who wrote in, we don't actually need as much money, nowhere near as much money as the DA or ANC. With a decent budget, we can just hold that balance of power. And I can assure you that it's like a snowball effect. There are people who are only discovering Cape independence now that are, even though we've been pushing this for 14 years, people who are discovering Cape independence now are saying, what a fantastic idea. And I guarantee you that if the DA is at 46% and the Cape Party is at 5%, and we start to push for referendums, this is going to be all over every single news channel in the country. And if it wasn't big before, it's going to be huge after. And that is how we drive this issue. And also, it's not going to happen overnight. So we can also be calm in our approach to this and go, the first step is getting the DA underneath 50%. The next step is getting the Cape Party to hold that balance of power. And then the third step after that will be building the campaign towards the referendum, in which we do educate the majority of people in the Western Cape on the benefits of an independent Cape.
Right. Well, let me just say that the problem you're facing is the mainstream media, or fake news, because they've got their own agenda in supporting the status quo. Now, I'll tell you what we're doing as the Loving Life channel, and I have to thank the generosity of our many subscribers, and one in particular who I see here tonight, who's been an incredibly important part of this strategy that we've got in place. We got two people out there. We got Petrosita, who is actually, we through the Loving Life family were able to get him wheels because he didn't have a car. He's now out on the road, and his whole aim in life, he calls it his life mission, is to go and see farmers who've been attacked, go and talk to them, alert people to what is going on in South Africa when it comes to farm murders. He then goes into the townships and he talks to the people in the townships. He's engaging people within the townships. And then we got Muzi and Kozi, who is also in the Eastern Cape. And he's actually getting involved with a new group called Biblical Democracy. And basically it's just the whole philosophy of living by the moral standards of the Bible. And he's actually in his township going out and talking to people about this. And this is when I said to you, how do you get the great unwashed out of their slumbers? I think if you were able to find some of your members who perhaps live in these areas, who then became advocates for the Cape Party, that would greatly increase your exposure out there. But now I just want to turn directly to the Cape Independence Party. We've been talking about some of the issues that are happening. But tell us about the Cape, the history of the Cape Independence Party, or the Cape Party.
It goes back a long way. You could say that the Cape Party's roots are seeded in the history of the mistake that was the Union of South Africa. Prior to 1910, the Cape region was an independent entity. It had multiple governors. We had our own elections. We had our own parliament, and we made our own laws. So we had our own postage stamp. We were an independent entity up until 1910. So
I love that triangular stamp.
yes,
That is a beauty. Anyway, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, that was our stamp.
Yeah.
And we must bring that back when we finally get free again. We were independent, so this is not like a new concept. There were many independent territories. I mean, South Africa is the new concept. South Africa didn't exist before 1910. So the Cape Party is simply a product of, I would say, the roots of the Cape. Now, bringing it closer to present day, in 1993, my father started an organization, a non-political organization, civic, called the Committee for the Cape Republic. And he was lobbying and petitioning, you got many hundreds of thousands of signatures to push and put pressure on the Nat government at that time, and basically the CODISA agreements, to look at a decentralized system, primarily look at an independent Cape. And at the same time, you had the IFP. My father was very close friends with Dr. Mario Ambrosini, who was the right-hand man to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And the IFP's got a tremendous history when it comes to fighting for decentralization. And they were fighting for a federal system. And unfortunately, what happened was the centrist apartheid government got into bed with, essentially, you might think of them as political opposites, but they were actually political bedfellows with the ANC. They were both dictatorial, centrist political organizations. And so the ANC, the apartheid government and the ANC essentially negotiated together. They isolated these other groups, like my father's Committee for the Cape Republic, like the certain groups within the Progressive Freedom Party, the IFP, etc., those who were calling for a more decentralized system or outright independence for the various territories, they were isolated. And this is a mistake that started in 1910 and was carried on in 94 when the apartheid government and the ANC essentially, the ANC took over the mantle from the Nats and implemented, discriminatory policies just with people with a different shade. So my father's group, the Committee for the Cape Republic, was fighting for this in 1993, 1994. And so, the beginning years of the new South Africa had promise. But by 2007, it became very obvious to me that the Rainbow Nation that the ANC had initially proposed was fading before our eyes. And there was a lot of terrifying things that were you could see the writing on the wall. And so I started the Cape Party in 2007. And we did so because we were completely disillusioned and disappointed and neglected by the DA, the ACDP, the Freedom Front, these organizations which essentially would consider as opposition to the ANC and these African nationalists. And they let us down. And so the Cape Party wouldn't exist. We would not be here if those political parties had done their job and really fought for our best interests. And as I mentioned earlier, the DA has now completely exposed themselves as they're trying to be a lukewarm ANC to try and get eaten to the ANC voter base.
ANC light.
ANC light, 100%. And they've completely neglected all of us here in the Cape who didn't vote for that. We didn't vote for those types of policies which they now support. So I started the Cape Party in 2007, and the roots of it go back to 1993. But in fact, with my father's Committee for the Cape Republic, but in fact, you could say that we are just we're a civic. We're a civic representation of something that exists in the DNA and the soil of the Cape, and it has been this way for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right. So why were you formed?
Well, it was out of it. I think a deep vision, a disillusionment, but a belief in that we don't just need to fight against where this country's going, but we can have something far, far greater than this. People, so many people we talked to also said, we don't like the DA, but we prefer them to the ANC. So many people simply vote for the DA because the DA is not the ANC. And the DA has been very good at stoking these fears. But we want better than that. We don't just want lesser than the worst option. Let's have some inspiration. Let's have some, let's dream. Let's fight for something that makes life worth living, and having our children grow up in a place that we can be proud of, and pioneer towards being a better society, and a better economy, and a better political system, and better sports, better music, better art, better science, things that just make society the beauty of life worth living. And so we've looked around the world, and we've looked at political and economic systems that succeed and fail. And it's very clear that we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. And the ANC is going down the wrong path, and the DA is going down the wrong path. And we can look at the world and go, let's look through history. South Africa is not the first country that suffered under colonialism. South Africa is not the first country that has buckled under communist policies and centrist policies. There are many countries around the world which have gone this route. And so let's look at a place like Singapore, which also suffered under colonialism. They suffered under the British Empire, just like we suffered under the British Empire. And Lee Kuan Yew took a nothing, muddied island in Singapore and turned it from 1965, within the next few decades, to being one of the highest standards of living on the planet. A little island with no gold, no resources.
It's an amazing place.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh,
and he did this. He did this with simply good economic policies. He didn't change the street names. You've still got Raffles Place, and you've got these old colonial names there. They don't look at the British as like this evil entity. They look at it as a part of their history. And you need to learn from history. And when you start tearing down statues and erasing your past, I mean, it's a cliche to say, but then, you're condemned to repeat it. And it's true.
Yeah.
So these people that want to tear down statues and erase history are really destroying the most valuable things in society. You can hate it, but you can then learn from it. And we need to look at our apartheid history. We need to look at the British Empire history. We need to learn from these mistakes. And we sure as need to look at the ANC regime and what they've done for the last 27 years. And we can't keep repeating these same mistakes.
You know what I find? You know what I find interesting about Singapore is that if you litter, if you drop a cigarette butt end or a piece of paper on the street, and the police catch you, you get caned. You get actually 6 of the best, and the discipline there is amazing. It is so clean because nobody wants to get caned, and on the other side, the actual political system is so free and open. It is fantastic. But yeah, back to you.
Yeah. Look, that is one element of Singapore that I personally don't agree with, and
well,
I'll tell you why. It does. It's certainly clean, but this is where, we need to appreciate the different value systems. And so we could have a canton. And let's use a word that's more understandable here in South Africa and the Cape, a municipality. So essentially a municipality would be the equivalent of a Swiss canton.
Right.
So we could have a canton in an independent Cape that adopts exactly Singapore's policies. So you could get caned for throwing chewing gum or a cigarette butt on the street. Whereas another municipality will go, no, we think that's a bit harsh. And the people will decide these policies. That's the difference. So you can have a community that goes, we like that. We want very strictly enforced laws here that you get caned or you get fined if you litter. But you'll get another community that goes, no, we don't really like that, and we want a more laissez-faire, free-going type of society. And that's what's beautiful. You can have all of these options.
Yeah.
And so if you're someone that believes in those types of rules and you're living in one municipality, you can go, I don't like this municipality because it's dirty and people are too free-going here. I want to move to that municipality that's run like Singapore. And because I like it, it's clean, it's efficient, it's well run. Yes,
Yeah.
it's strict, but that's what I want. And you could be someone living in that municipality that goes, oh, I don't like being caned or fined because I'm a cigarette smoker. I'm going to go move to that municipality where they're more laid back.
Yeah.
So people have free choice, and that's what a beautiful vision that is. That we
Yeah.
can live in this country, an independent Cape that is not a one size fits all. You can be Afrikaans, English, Xhosa, Christian, Muslim, centrist, decentrist, whatever your belief system, and there can be a place for you. And so this is why we look at Singapore as being, we don't need to be suffering the levels of poverty that we're suffering here in South Africa. What Lee Kuan Yew proved, because the ANC line is that, the reason we're suffering from poverty here is because of apartheid. So we've inherited a colonial past, and that's why everything's broken in South Africa. Well, anyone with any common sense can see that's a blatant lie, and you don't need to look any further than Singapore and Lee Kuan Yew's policy that took a place that was also crippled by colonialism. And he took it from a muddied island with nothing. If you look at photos of Singapore in early 1960s and before, it was wood huts. It was an island of wooden huts. You look at it now, it is the depiction of a first world country, and there's no levels of poverty and unemployment are virtually non-existent. It's an incredibly well-run place. So we can copy their economic policies because it's proven to work.
Yeah.
Even in spite of a colonial history. But we can also provide the freedom of a place like Switzerland, which, as I mentioned before, survived 2 world wars without a single bullet being fired between Germans and French and Italians who were killing each other in World War I, World War II, across the borders. So, and that allows for freedom of expression and freedom of choice, and in a way that you can have the best of Singapore and you can have the best of the freedom of Switzerland. And this is what we envision in an independent Cape.
Well, I have to tell you that Singapore is apparently the second most livable city in the world today. It's the second in the world. I think the first is somewhere in Sweden or something like that. But, that's a huge endorsement for what they're doing in Singapore. And it is an economic powerhouse. Here in Australia, for example, I use Optus Internet. And Optus is one of the biggest internet providers, and it is owned by a Singaporean company. They've got net, and the Singaporean Airlines, absolutely fantastic airline. Anyway, let's get back onto, so I totally endorse where you're wanting to go when you talk about that. Now, what does Cape Independence stand for?
I think it stands for different things, and I think it's implicit in the type of country that we want. It stands for freedom. It stands for anything you really want it to be. It's liberty at its best. And
like, as you said, like the Swedish model.
Swiss, yeah,
the Swiss model. Sorry,
so
yeah.
You can have strict policies, high taxes, centralized system in a specific community if that's what the community likes, and if the whole country decides that's what they want, then that's the choice they can have. I think it's highly unlikely. I think we're going to see beautiful expressions of community flavors coming through, and yeah, yeah. So it's anything that people want it to be, and I think it has to be that way because we do have a very diverse population here in the Cape, and historically it's been like that. You know, from 1652, when it was a refreshment station in the Dutch East India Company, you had people from all over the world coming here, and this is the Afrikaans language. It's essentially this amalgamation of different languages and cultures coming together. And even our South African English is not really a normal English. We adopt a lot of Afrikaans terms.
Like
you know, exactly, absolutely. It's an expression of we were a trade port, which is similar to Singapore. The Cape Town was a trade port, and as a result of that, we brought many different people from different walks of life came here. And look at the majority population; it's mixed ethnicity. So you know, and the very first governor of South Africa was a man of mixed race. He was a colored man. So you know, as much as the ANC likes to twist history and make it look like it's nothing but evil and wicked, sure, you know, there are many things in history that thank goodness we've learned from many of those chapters, and we're not living in a place where, you know, there's slavery and things like that. But you know, you had many slaves, initial slaves in the Cape. That next generation were some of the wealthiest people in the Cape, because the Dutch married some of their slaves, and then their children became free men who then owned property and became some of the wealthiest and most powerful people. So look at the majority population of the Cape. This is now what is it, 300, over 350 going to 400 years of this cultural melting pot that has its unique flavor and its unique identity. And so the majority population, being of different ethnic backgrounds, is testament to the fact that we've always been a lot more open here in the Cape. And I think that's what's unique and beautiful about us. And it's different in other parts of South Africa. You know, look at KwaZulu-Natal. It's an incredibly proud nation, and they've got every reason to be a very proud nation. But, you know, amongst the Black African community, there's different perspectives on the history of Shaka Zulu. Some tribes absolutely despise them, and obviously the Zulus are incredibly proud of Shaka Zulu. And you know, this is why history cannot be erased. And you know, they forced the Zulus to tear down the statue of Shaka Zulu at the airport there. You cannot erase history like this. It's whether they're doing it here in the Cape or they're doing it in KwaZulu-Natal. The outcome is, as I mentioned before, you erase history and you're condemned to repeat it. So we need to be respectful of our past, good and bad, learn from it, and make better decisions moving forward. And respect Zulus, Xhosas, the people of the Cape, Sotho, Tswana, and there are so many different other groups in South Africa that are actually also looking for independence. We've got good relationships with groups and individuals in KwaZulu-Natal that are very much in favor of KwaZulu-Natal independence. I've personally been in contact with the Abutembu royal family, who they are very much in favor of making the Eastern Cape an independent country. I know of Sothos and Lesotho that feel that they got hard done by when the British made Lesotho, or granted them independence, and the borders that they were given were quite a bit smaller than their tribal historical lands. So they've got a good argument for increasing the size of Lesotho. There were Tswanas living in the north of South Africa that their tribe's sake, just across the border, live much higher standards of living in Botswana than the Tswanas living in the north of South Africa. So there's a push there for the north of South Africa to actually be amalgamated into Botswana. there's all sorts of interesting things. Obviously, Swaziland, an independent country. So you've got this country, South Africa, that has these two massive holes in it, independent countries. I mean, if that's not a sign that we're a patchwork of independent nations, then I don't know what is. So we believe in Cape independence, obviously, because this is our home. But frankly, this is a far broader issue. And there are people, tribes, cultures throughout the southern part of Africa that have a deep yearning and desire for self-governance. We're not alone.
And you know what's really good to see is that you're working closely with other independence organizations like Cape Exit, who've, I think, got about 600,000 mandates now for independence for the Western Cape. So, and that's all through Peter Hammond. And, you know, what an amazing man Peter is. Yes. Okay, I know we've discussed this briefly, but do you want to expand on what are the reasons for wanting an independent Cape? Do you want to expand on that a bit?
Look, I think it's almost. I think in our earlier discussions, I think maybe let's go back a little bit to lockdown and everything that's happening with COVID. I think maybe that's more pertinent. You know, I think anyone that's probably listening to this right now knows why we need an independent Cape. And even people that haven't quite come around to the idea of Cape independence, or at least greater autonomy for the Western Cape. You've got 27 years of, you know, you've got junk status, you've got rolling blackouts. I read a report the other day that there's predictions that we're going to be hitting stage 8, between stage 6. Stage 6 is almost guaranteed this winter, but we could even go up to stage 8, which means you're getting 48 out of, let's bring it down to 2 days. Out of 2 days, 48 hours, you're only going to have electricity for 24 hours. So, I mean, food is going to start rotting through the winter. People are going to, some people are going to die of cold. You just can't, because winters are cold. And, you know, it's madness that South Africa once, you know, I mean, we were a prosperous country not that long ago, and the mess that we're in now is absolutely unacceptable. And the fact that the government can impose these types of economically destructive policies in the form of these lockdowns, which, frankly, many scientists around the world have completely condemned. There are far better ways to address COVID than lockdowns. You know, and Sweden is a shining example of that. And, you know, people, you know, those elements in the media which love to twist it, which are pro-lockdown, say, oh, well, you know, they've changed their pathway on this. You look at the numbers, and it's an absolute no-brainer. It's virtually indistinguishable, Sweden from countries which had these terrible lockdowns. So, you know, the justification to do this is just scientifically non-existent. And so the fact that the South African government has done this and is continuing to do this, I mean, we're in lockdown, we're in heavy lockdown right now as we speak. I know people in the restaurant industry that, I mean, goodness, I know some people that, frankly, if they don't get their UIF grant in the coming weeks, are not going to be able to pay their rent. And these, you know, these were people that a year ago you would not even think that they could be on the street in the next 2-3 months. And that's just people I know personally. I mean, this is widespread. So, you know, you asked why Cape independence. I mean, I think, you know, people need to ask why not Cape independence.
Well, I have to tell you that I've heard rumblings just in the last 24 hours from several independent people in South Africa that the SASSA payments are now under threat because the government's got no money. Now, if they stop paying SASSA, there's going to be chaos because, you know, that would be the time when the government just implodes to actually just form an independent Cape to say, okay, we've had enough of this crap. Let's go independent. But we'll get to that in a second.
And I just want to add to that.
Yeah.
These people that refer to Cyril Ramaphosa as their father, Yeah, this is the guy that got 500 billion rand just a few months ago to alleviate some of the tremendous economic destruction that these lockdowns were causing. So how people can still look at Ramaphosa and the ANC government with a stitch of dignity is beyond me. They have proven themselves to be completely fascist, self-interested, and how anyone could believe a word that comes out of their mouth is beyond me.
Well, I have to tell you that it was a Polish leader who first came out and said that he was bribed with nearly $1 billion to bring in a harsh lockdown over his people. And he said he wasn't going to buy into it. And he made that public. And you had the Ugandan fellow who said basically the same thing. And now just in recent days, you've had the guy in Madagascar, the leader of Madagascar, saying the same thing. He was apparently offered $10 million if he brought in a lockdown in Madagascar. And he said, why the hell do we need it? And these guys have gone public. Now, okay, one leader you could say, yeah, maybe. But when you got three leaders from totally different countries saying, hey, we were given a bribe. And look at Ramaphosa, the way he is running the country. He was clearly on the take. And, you know, I have no question about that. And it's the IMF and the World Bank who are pushing these bribes because it's all part of the Great Reset. Anyway, that's a story for another day.
Well, you put forward a very strong argument. I mean, 500 billion rand is no small amount. And for that to I mean, it's different reports on how much has disappeared, but huge numbers.
Yeah, it's a bribe. It's a bribe. That's all it is. What will an independent Cape look like?
I think I've nailed that. I think I've nailed that. It's Singapore and it's Switzerland. You know.
What about its size, the geographic size?
Okay. We have an idea of what the country would look like. Basically, we've looked at historical voting maps of South Africa, and people that are interested can actually do this. And you'll see that the entire Western Cape, the entire Northern Cape, and about 6 municipalities in the Eastern Cape, and 1 municipality in the Free State, it goes a different color to the rest of the country. So the rest of the country goes green, which is ANC, except for KwaZulu-Natal. So that you see that come up as red, different colors. So KZN has a different ideology and a political persuasion than the rest of South Africa in the north. And here in the Cape, the broader Cape region, the entire Western Cape, the entire Northern Cape, and a big chunk of the Eastern Cape and part of the Free State also has a different political ideology to the ANC. And you see this. So the ANC doesn't have anywhere near the stronghold it has in this broad territory as it has in the other parts of South Africa, where it just wins huge numbers, 70, 80, 90%. And so this territory, we imagine, would most likely form the Cape Republic. So it's a very large territory. It's about the size of France. And yeah, it encapsulates those provinces. However, we at the Cape Party don't believe in a top-down approach. We believe that this, for it to be successful, it has to be entirely grassroots and democratic. And so basically our starting point is here in the Western Cape. And we believe, and it could be even finer than that, from municipal elections, there could be territories within the Western Cape that are outright in favor of Cape independence, and there'll be other territories that don't. This can happen in a patchwork manner. There's various different legal routes that this can take and political routes that this can take. But the people themselves will decide what the Cape Republic looks like.
Right.
So those territories which vote a majority in that referendum, those territories that vote a majority in favor of Cape independence, those are the territories that will form part of the country. If there are territories that do not vote in favor of Cape independence, then they won't be a part of the territory. Right.
Now, the big question is is it legal? Now, before answering that, I just want to draw, well, you'd be aware of that document signed in 1993 by Viljoen and by the ANC, which basically said that the Afrikaners or other groups had the right to their own cultural independence, basically. Do you think that has any bearing at all with regard to the Cape independence situation? And then let's just look at the legal aspect of, is it legal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the foundation of Section 235. So it absolutely has legal bearing. And in fact, those that want to criticize Section 235, and certainly there are elements of it which would need to be tested legally, the very fact that it exists, for those who are au fait with law, just the fact that you have a section that imagines the possibility of a certain political outcome. Just to put this in perspective, Southern Sudan, which got independence just a few years ago, that constitution didn't even have a section in their constitution which allows for self-determination. We have a pretty explicit clause which states we have a right to self-determination.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first point. So it exists, and this section 235 needs to be taken to court, and we need to test out the various legal principles which underpin this right to self-determination. So, and the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, came out with a statement a few years back when the king of the Abutembu tribe in the Eastern Cape was calling for Eastern Cape independence, and people, you had your typical blowhorns like Pierre de Vos saying that, oh, this is treason, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and the National Prosecuting Authority absolutely slam dunked that and said this is a political matter. And so the fact that it even exists in the Constitution, it comes down to the will of the people on this. And so there's absolutely nothing illegal about what the Abutembu king was proposing, and certainly it's in our Constitution, and it simply needs to be tested legally in the courts, and that's certainly what we intend to do. But it goes far further than that. It's not just the South African Constitution. South Africa is a member of the African Union. We are a member of the United Nations, and there are an absolute avalanche of charters and legal conditions under which self-determination is guaranteed. And we're a signatory to every single one of these legal charters. So if you look at those terms in the African Union Constitution and the United Nations Constitution, there is absolutely zero discussion and argument about the right to self-determination. And as we saw, and South Africa is even better than many other countries that have gone this route, with Sudan being the most recent example, where you don't even need to have a clause for self-determination. We have a clause for self-determination.
Right.
So people need to just go, you know what, it's a choice. It's really that simple. If you want independence, we're here to stand for it. Essentially, we've been here fighting for this for 14 years. We were not bought. We have no other agendas than people of the Cape. We're essentially a civic organization that formed as a political party to successfully challenge through the political and legal structures the right to self-determination. So if people want that, we're here to fight for that.
Right. Now, I've just got to address something that happens. I do this from time to time, something that's happening in the side chat, and you'll find this quite amusing. Charlotte Smith said, "Die man is baie mooi." and then someone here said, "Oh, you got to put your slippers under his bed, Charlotte." And Rudy said at Charlotte Smith, "Ja, die dames like die man kwaai." So I'm just passing that on to you. You'll see it in the side chat later when you watch this video again. Okay, so let's get back to the serious side. Financially viable, we have kind of touched on that. and we can understand. Is there anything you want to add on to the financially viable side of the plan?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for actually raising that. I forgot to mention that. No, it's huge. It's huge. People need to know this. There's something called the Division of Revenue Act, DORA, and she is an evil person. So DORA is it's an act that was passed by the South African government. It's how the National Treasury collects taxes around the country, and there are 3 spheres of government: national, provincial, and local. And so the Western Cape, the numbers, I'll give last year's numbers because it's simpler. They're a little bit higher than now, but the percentages are identical. So quite simply, the Western Cape is paying to the ANC-controlled National Treasury 200 billion rand in taxes every single year. The ANC-controlled National Treasury is giving back to the Western Cape a mere 50 billion rand.
25%.
So we are losing 70. We are losing direct access to 75% of the taxes that we produce here.
Wow.
If the Western Cape was an independent country, overnight, without even changing these terrible communist policies, but overnight we could cut taxes in half and still have access to double the amount of resources that we're currently getting. So, I mean, that's more schools, more hospitals, better roads, infrastructure, etc.
Right. Now, Jack, before we started the live stream, when we had our initial chat a couple of days ago, I said we'd try and keep this down to 90 minutes. It looks like we might be able to. But if we go slightly over that mark, is that okay?
Absolutely. Perfect.
Okay.
No.
Fantastic.
Always good to be with you.
Yeah. Now, who are your allies and enemies in the Cape Party?
I think the word enemy is a strong word, but I think certainly there are different entities out there which we have a greater capacity to negotiate with and find common ground with. We obviously have very good relationships. Well, look, there are areas that we don't see eye to eye on with entities like the CIAG, Cape Independence Advocacy Group, Cape Exit, ULA, Sovereign State of Good Hope. There are a number of, King Kubaha. Many people disagree with some of the approaches he's taken, but this is someone who at least stood up and made a stand for Cape independence. So
he's a Khoisan guy.
Absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
Yes, he's a Khoisan.
Yeah, I've had him on my live stream in the past.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, we have a slightly different view. We've got great admiration and respect for any individual or organization or entity that is willing to stand up and have their voices heard in fighting for this issue, no matter how they choose to do it. As I mentioned before, we specifically chose to become a political party because certainly the experiences that we had in the past, like in 1993, with my father's civic organization, the Committee for the Cape Republic, he got a tremendous amount of signatures to pressurize the government of the time, the negotiators at the time, to push for an independent Cape, or at least a decentralized political system. And, they took his petition. They said, thank you very much, but, no, thank you. You can go and whistle. And, unfortunately, these things are important, though. So it's not one or the other. I think having all of these different entities pushing for Cape independence, it strengthens the overall fight. We believe that the only way we're going to get a referendum is not by asking for it, but by taking it. And the only way that we can do that, if we continue to allow our futures to be determined by the same political parties that have governed us for the last 27 years, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have exactly what we've had for the last 27 years.
Right.
And there's a little quote from Einstein, which I think sums this up very well. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and to expect a different result. So if people think that they're going to get Cape independence by voting for the same political parties that have held power for the last 27 years, that's highly, highly unlikely. And so, as mentioned earlier, the quickest way and the most effective way that we can politically and legally achieve this is by getting the DA underneath 50%. That has to be everyone's goal across the board. If you're in favor of Cape independence, you want the DA under 50%. It
So
is
that means,
critical.
That means don't vote DA.
Do not vote DA.
Right.
And certainly what we're going to see, that doesn't mean the DA is going to do poorly. I'll tell you, the DA will definitely get 40% or above, no doubt. They're going to be the largest political party. So for those people that like the DA, love the DA, they can sleep easy at night knowing that the DA is still going to be by far the largest political party in the Western Cape. They've got the hugest budget. They're entrenched in the political system, and it's very difficult to overcome those types of forces. We've been in campaigns against them where we've had huge support from communities, and on the day of elections, the DA rolls in with fleets of buses laden with DA T-shirts and food parcels and all sorts of
bribes,
donations.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And, the community gets into the buses and the taxis, gets their free T-shirt and free food parcels, and invariably the DA pummels the vote through. So they're a very well-oiled machine. They're very good at what they do. So, politics is the way politics works. So people can rest easy. If you like the DA, don't worry. They've got so much money. They're going to brute force into 45%. But for those who have a vision to change the trajectory of where the country is going, it's very critical that they tell all their friends and family, don't worry, the DA will be the biggest party by far, but if you can get them to 49% or 48% or 47%, we're starting to open up a window where we can negotiate with them.
Have a coalition.
And sorry?
Have a coalition.
Absolutely, and then have a
Yeah.
coalition. And so
And a referendum.
So, there are issues that we certainly are on the same page as the DA and the Freedom Front and the ACDP. And we certainly look forward to negotiating with the DA and the Freedom Front and the ACDP. And I think I've got a strong belief that there will be good areas of overlap. So these people are they're other political players in the space, but they're not enemies, and they're kind of, in the long term, I think there certainly will be necessary alliances, and not from a political party perspective, but literally I think there'll come a point where we need to do this for the benefit of the voters and the citizens of the Cape, because things are getting so bad so rapidly. And I also don't want to refer to the ANC or the EFF as enemies as such. I think these are political players. It's crazy. I mean, it's hard to believe considering some of the things you hear from Malema, but I've heard from sources that, he's had discussions with, white Afrikaners who, apparently he's had either friendly relations or business relations. And he sort of said, oh, well, this is part of the political rhetoric. It's very, very dangerous. It's hard to say to what extent. Look, I've been doing this for 14 years, and I have, excuse me for having a tremendous distrust in politicians. And
I can
political
understand
parties.
that. I can understand.
It's we're not really a political party as such. We really are a civic organization, and we simply chose the political route. We're normal taxpayers. We're normal citizens. We're normal voters. We're business people. that are so disillusioned with the other political parties that we started our own political party to fight against it from the inside. And I think people should look at us as from that perspective rather. And so we want to come with clear-headed, common sense negotiations to these various entities. As I mentioned before, once we get our mandate from the people of the Cape, we're going to have to sit down with the ANC and the EFF and say, listen, these are our issues, these are our concerns, this is what we'd like to see happen. And, then the international community is going to get involved as well, because this, becomes an international matter. So there will no doubt be negotiations. So there's the noise that the media makes and politicians make, but there's a difference when it comes to the law, when it comes to votes. Essentially, these people, they're not business people like you or like I might be. These are people that have made their entire lives on using their political influence to get money from donors, that use political agendas to persuade voters to support them so that they get enough votes to get seats in parliament, so that they get their handsome salaries from their government paychecks. So these are people that they actually, if you look at it from that point of view, they have financial interests in the political agendas that they push. They may not even believe the things that they say as vehemently as it's reported in the media. So, if this is why it's important to hold the DA to account, and the DA is not going to give us a referendum on self-determination if they get 51%. Why? Because they don't have to. If we hurt them in their pocket, and if we hurt them at the ballot box, that's when they're going to start taking us seriously. And this is what voters need to do. If they don't want to be abused any longer by the DA and the ANC, they have the power. And the DA is actually, in this upcoming election, the DA is the entity that needs to be held to account. And so people need to pull their vote from the DA, not even necessarily if they don't like the DA, but just to hold them to account. You can be a better DA supporter by not voting DA in these next elections.
Right. Now, I just want to address, we got close to 400 people watching right now. And first off, please remember to subscribe to Loving Life here on YouTube, because we do have live streams every night at 8 p.m. And above my head, please register on lovinglivetv.com. We are moving off YouTube over a very long period of time. We're transitioning to our own independent platform because of the censorship taking place on the big platforms on the internet. Now, let's get back to the subject here. I've got a number of questions which I'll be putting to Jack in a few minutes. I've got one final question for Jack. And Jack, that is, how can people support you and make this vision that we've been talking about a reality?
Very easily. They can join our Facebook page, Cape Party Free the Cape, or they can go to our website, www.capeparty.com. We have a tremendous, we've had tremendous support coming in. We've got a great number of candidates that have already been promoting the Cape Party vision in their various communities. Obviously, we have local elections coming up this year, so anyone that would like to be a candidate in their respective areas, if we don't already have candidates in your area, please send us your details and join the party. Or even if we do have a candidate in your area, join and help build the size of the branch. The more hands on deck, the more we can spread the word, more people going door to door, handing out flyers. And as I mentioned earlier, literally, a small donation each month makes a huge difference. If we can get a few hundred, a few thousand people giving in 50 Rand a month, 100 Rand a month, it goes a huge long way to being able to help us pay for the printing of flyers, the printing of T-shirts, the putting of posters on polls around election time. Contesting elections are very expensive. Putting our adverts up on TV, radio, putting social media ads out there, all these things cost a lot of money, and just a little bit each month really helps us make this vision a reality. So you can either join us or financially support us, and primarily, spread the word far and wide. It's simply a choice. We don't need to live like this. We don't need to be slaves anymore. It's simply a choice. We can put an X on a piece of paper and change the future.
Right. Now, I've put your YouTube channel link down below this video in the description so people can go there and find out more about the Cape Party. Okay, so Liam Peterson says, if the Cape becomes independent, will the rest of the world recognize us as a legitimate country?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, all you need is one other nation around the world to recognize you as an independent country. I mean, there are countries around the world today which are recognized as independent, which are not recognized as independent by other nations. I mean, for example, Israel is not recognized by some nations as an independent country, but most of the world does recognize Israel as an independent country. Tibet is not recognized by China as an independent country, or Taiwan as an independent country, yet there are many countries around the world which do recognize Tibet and Taiwan as independent countries. So you simply need to have working relationships with other countries around the world, and we certainly I know that there are Cape independence groups that are working very hard at building up a lot of those relationships. We too have got relationships with entities overseas, and so yeah, absolutely, we would like to have every single country in the world recognize the Cape as an independent country. That may not be the case, but you just need one country to recognize you, and then gradually in time, that would build. So yeah, we have no doubt of that.
Okay. The next question, Red Sky Mountaintop says, for Jack, please, no quotas under the Canton system, and absolutely zero CRT either, please. We'll be the richest country in the world. What's your response to that?
Sorry, CRT, what's that?
Yeah, I don't know. He said okay. CRT. It's obviously some taxation.
Cyril Ramaphosa tax, yeah.
Oh, that's what it is, Cyril Ramaphosa tax, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Yeah, I think equality before the law is an absolutely, it's a non-negotiable. And to think that we're living in the 21st century where policies like this can even be entertained, no. An independent Cape, we've got to leave racially discriminative policies behind, and certainly the Cape.
Fantastic.
Everyone is a first-class citizen.
Yeah, I think that would bring in a lot of support. And Liam actually says, I have this where we don't mention race anymore and use race classification. And Fiona Tim said, I lived in Switzerland for a whole year. Their system is a group of les cantons run like an iron fist in a velvet glove. The expression runs like a Swiss watch is very apt. And obviously it runs very well. Now, Viking Boers asks, how many parties are there going to be with the next election?
It's probably going to be a fairly large number, as has been the case in previous elections. So large, I mean, could be 30, 40, could be a large number of political parties. But, we've got a very distinct logo. The Cape Party is not hard to find. You'll see our red, white, and blue colors there, and yeah, the names. So, but yeah, probably about 30 or 40 parties will be running. Well, look, it's a local election, so it depends. In Cape Town, probably around 30 or 40, but in the other, we're going to be contesting through most of the Western Cape. And look, we may even contest in other parts of the Northern Cape and Eastern Cape. So anyone in those territories that is interested, who believes in Cape independence, and is interested in contesting, please do contact us. As I said before, elections do cost money, so we're going to have to see what resources we can allocate and fundraising we can get for various campaigns in various places. But yeah, we'll primarily be based in the Cape, and different areas will have different amounts of political parties contesting. So yeah.
Okay. Now, I've got two final questions for you. In fact, one's only a statement. Bruce Baxter says, many Cape businesses and farmers would benefit from independence. Has Jack approached big business people for funding?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Well, I guess the answer is yes.
Well, yeah, the answer is yes. I think I think more businesses are going to see the benefit of this now. You know, we've been around for 14 years. We certainly approached some big business people in the earlier years. Perhaps the timing wasn't right. But yeah, he's absolutely right. The businesses would explode. Property values would go up. You know, taxes would drop. We'd put in good business economic policies, as we spoke about. Singapore went from a muddied island to one of the most prosperous countries in the world. Just good economic policies. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. The Cape, and on top of that, we'd get a huge amount of the taxes that we're currently losing to the ANC. I mean, that would all be coming back. So, we would really be prosperous.
Right. Now, I've got one final question for you, and it comes from your admirer, Charlotte Smith. And she says, do I understand correctly? You have to buy a house to go to Cape. The houses there will not be cheap. 1 million perhaps. What do the people do who can't buy there? I think she's talking about how the price of just what you're talking about, how the price of houses will go.
Look, the Cape is, as we spoke about earlier, I mean, if it's the broader Cape territory, it's the size of France. It's a huge, huge country. If it's just the Western Cape, I mean, it's a massive, massive country. There's a lot of land here. So you might not be able to come in and buy in Camps Bay or Bishop's Court. But there's no doubt that I think anyone who believes in, you know, who wants to put away the types of policies that the ANC pushes, and, you know, people without criminal records, people with a good work ethic, you know, the Cape will welcome these people with open arms. So, you know, you may start off having, you know, pay a little bit less and buy some property, you know, in the surrounding areas. You know, there's some very well priced properties around Cape Town. You're just a little bit out of the center. And if you want to go, I mean, the Cape is so beautiful. You know, one can get properties out more on the west coast or the east coast.
Fishhook is lovely.
Oh man, the Cape is just so beautiful. So
and the prices there aren't so bad.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Absolutely. So if you want to live in yeah, sure, the most expensive parts of Cape Town, yes, absolutely, and the most expensive parts of Stellenbosch, yeah, that's expensive. But no, there's more than enough land here in the Cape that's very well priced, very cheap.
Okay, I'm going to just give you a final comment that's come from Viking Boer, and then I'm going to ask you to make a closing statement to discuss anything you want to the people who watch this video now and later. Viking Boer has said, thanks, Scott, for putting all the questions to Jack. I think we have a better view and understanding after tonight. Although this is not the end, lots of work is still to be done. So thanks for that feedback, Viking. Now, Jack, over to you. Is there something you'd like to say in closing to everybody who's watching the live stream now or later?
You know, we started off our discussion a little bit about COVID and lockdown, and I think, you know, that's certainly the most prominent thing right now. There's some numbers that I didn't get to earlier, which I think is quite important that people remember, because, you know, memories fade. And prior to lockdown, the ANC government told us that we were going to have a 21-day lockdown. And the reason we were going to have a 21-day lockdown was because they estimated, but I'm actually, if you'll give me a moment here, I'm going to read this exact News 24 article from the 19th of March last year. And it's titled Exclusive, the Terrifying Coronavirus Projections That Push Government into Lockdown. Before he announced stringent lockdown measures to combat the novel coronavirus, President Cyril Ramaphosa was told that a slow and inadequate response by government to the outbreak could result in anywhere between 87,900 and 351,000 deaths in South Africa, and cause the health system to be overwhelmed. So this is what we were being told on the 19th of March last year. And so, you know, anyone that's been following the numbers now knows, I mean, it's not even close.
Right.
And you look at tuberculosis deaths, you look at cancer deaths, you look at HIV deaths. You know, I think people need to, we need to hold, and the DA has gone absolutely along with this, with the ANC. This is, and it's a very arrogant,
paternalistic.
Sorry?
Paternalistic.
Yeah, but it's arrogant from a financial point of view too.
Yeah.
You know, it's people who have the financial means to survive months and months and months on end without needing an income. I mean, we've got Cape Party supporters in Mitchell's Plain and Delft, which literally live hand to mouth day by day. Yeah. And, you know, we support, you know, charities that help these communities, and, you know, the suffering that's going on, the poor people, the working classes who literally either need to look after their families on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis, are literally on the verge of hitting the streets or dying of starvation from these policies. So, you know, we need to hold the DA to account on this, and really, I think that we need to demand liberty back, not just, you know, for you know, the Western Cape to govern itself, but we need to reestablish the relationship between voters and taxpayers and citizens and these politicians and these political entities and these governments which we employ to do administrative tasks for us. And people are really hurting at the moment. And, you know, I think a word needs to go out. There is tremendous suffering taking place at the moment as a result of this. And that's often forgotten because, as you mentioned before, the media, which is one arm of the state, presents the case that justifies the state's position. And you spoke about bribery earlier and why the states might pursue certain policies. So I think that's something that we certainly need to keep in mind in these unbelievably turbulent times that we had last year, and it's going to continue this year. So, you know, strength to people out there who are in a tough financial position and are suffering under, you know, these policies. I personally know people that are really suffering at the moment as a result of these lockdown restrictions. So, you know, strength to you. And, you know, let's stand together. Let's fight hard in this upcoming election. Let's hold these politicians to account. The Cape Party's here to fight for you. We're going to do the best that we can do. Be part of the team, support us, and let's make this dream happen.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Jack. That was very, very informative, and it's been very pleasant chatting to you for the last, well, it's about 100 minutes now, but, you know, we've got close to your timeline. In closing, I just want to say thank you so much to the moderators for looking after the side chat, and for everybody who's joined us tonight. Thank you for being part of this discussion. And please share this video widely with your friends, and remember to register to lovinglifetv.com, where we are moving to in the future. And I've discussed the reasons for that earlier. All right, I'm going to shut down the live stream now, but before I do, I just want to say thanks to Jack. Yeah, carry on, Jack.
I want to say one more thing, and I want to say thank you to you, Scott. I mean, I think you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
2:30.
I think 3:30 in the
No,
morning.
2:30.
Oh, sorry, 2:30 in the
2:30.
morning to really highlight really important issues that are taking place in South Africa, and it's really so strengthening and heartening to have someone like you in Australia who is just giving attention to issues that are so critical and so important to people and the lives of those living in South Africa. So I know how hard it must be to get up in those hours as regularly as you do. So a huge hats off to you. A huge thank you, Scott. Yeah, absolutely incredibly grateful for everything that you do.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate that. And if something's happening within your party that you'd like the world to know about, just contact Marlena and we'll certainly cover it for you live.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to shut down the live stream now because we've gone over the time quoted by about 15 minutes, but we kind of reined it in quite well. But once again, thanks, Jack, and thank you for everybody for joining us. And don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we have another live stream on a totally different subject. But you'll have to subscribe to Loving Life and ring the bell so you can get the alerts as to what that live stream is all about. All right. Cheers, guys.